All right, very good. Welcome, everyone. This is going to be like the easiest webinar for me ever, not just this year. Lauren pointed out that's not much of a compliment saying that since it's only January 12th. So we're going to talk about Facebook fundraising in all its facets. My panelist today, Kate Bullard, is from Turnkey, and she and I have been tearing a swath through the United States and abroad, learning everything we can learn about Facebook fundraising. And the route to do that is by interviewing service partners for Facebook fundraising, looking at how it works technologically, and then interviewing people who have had success and had failure. So we've interviewed all kinds of people and put together a body of knowledge, and Kate's going to be sharing that. And then once we do that, we will talk to Lauren and Mike, who are going to tell us about their particular story in which they raised $87,000 net in just 3 months. And that 3 months includes, I have an idea, to let's shut it down, which is pretty impressive. They fundraised over the course of 31 days. So with that, I'm going to jump in. Oh, by the way, today my role is going to be as resident kindergartner. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to interrupt the adults, and I'm going to ask them why repeatedly until they're so annoyed they send me to my room. All right, so let's get started. Kate, jump in. Tell us about Facebook.
All righty. Well, hello, everybody. I wanted to talk with you guys about a few of the pillars, if you will, of the Facebook fundraising environment. I am presuming, excuse me, that there's a range of folks on here who've never done any Facebook fundraising, have some organic fundraising happening, and also the utilization of Facebook groups as well. So I'm kind of going to go through the spectrum for you guys. And this is really, in my mind, a progression drill is what, my volleyball coaching would say to do. So each piece you build and you keep going back to, and you practice and you practice and you practice, and you'll see really good results. One of the main overarching themes is, the Facebook environment isn't necessarily, if you build it, they will come. So we do know that you need to have some intentionality with your strategy for how you treat the Facebook environment. So with that being said, let's get started with kind of the basics. Number one, is your Facebook fundraising turned on? I do know that can be a challenge for some organizations. For example, we at Turnkey have a very dear friend who can't get Facebook fundraising turned on for her organization because they only have a PO box address, and Facebook requires a physical address. So little things like that can get in the way of some really great ways for your constituents to support you. Once you have your Facebook fundraising turned on, I think it's really important to consider the parallels that you have between your other revenue streams. So with that, I like to say it's still peer-to-peer fundraising, whether they're happening organically or not. There's still really invaluable expertise in the market for how walks run, any cycling events, those sorts of things. How you activate and build those relationships with people is still the same. It's just happening in a very different place.
So Kate, first interruption. What is your experience inside accounts regarding who owns Facebook fundraising?
I have a range of experiences in the conversations that I have. For some organizations, Facebook fundraising is considered under the marketing umbrella. So it's owned by marketing, which can be good in your Facebook algorithm strength piece that we can talk about in a minute. But ultimately it's an acquisition tool. So there are other organizations that are putting this under, a digital team or a peer-to-peer team. And now coming into the market, as you guys can probably see, is an endurance aspect to it as well. So there are some organizations that I'm talking to who are throwing their hands up and saying, we don't know who should own this, so we're not going to touch it yet. We're going to wait and see what other US nonprofits experience before we make a decision, because that's not the battle we can face right now.
Historically, sales and marketing or development and marketing have been at odds in one way or another. And I think it's interesting. Our guests today, Lauren and Mike, Lauren represents marketing, Mike represents development, and we're finding that is a manifestation of the dissolving of the line between the two. Automation particularly has made marketing and sales, the line is not there anymore. And organizations who realize that have an easier time integrating Facebook fundraising, and organizations who still have silos, but they're friendly, have an easier time. Okay, back to you, Kate.
Yeah, so we've got the Facebook fundraising started. You guys can assess, in your organization, what the parallels are between the expertise that you have in-house and, just it being in a different place. For example, if you have a bunch of canceled in-person events, think of Facebook as the new event location and leverage the millions of dollars that they've spent on their algorithms to help you stand up. So I would encourage you guys to assess that as well. When you are there and you're at the algorithm strength piece, there are different ways that you can build the algorithm. I like to think of it kind of like the FICO score, where we all know it's great, but do we all know how it's calculated? Like, no, that's a big fancy secret. I think that there are good ways that you can target people to build up your algorithm as well. So that you can, it's a, not to get too technical, like physiological terms, but it's a positive feedback loop. So the more eyes are hitting your ads and clicking through on your stuff online, the more you're going to get in front of people. So it's an ongoing effort from your organization to build that up.
Hey, Kate, I want to address Kelly B, who chatted me. And Kelly, thank you for confessing. And what she's confessing to is that she has a better life than the rest of us because she's never had a Facebook account. God bless you. I wish I were the same way, but I'm not. And I am on Facebook and I fundraise on Facebook. So what she's saying is that it's a little bit intimidating coming from, I don't know anything about it, to this conversation. Can you back up a moment, Kate? And just for the folks like Kelly, take me from zero. Like, take me from, why are people even on Facebook?
Well, I don't know. That's a personal choice. I'm on Facebook because I'm in the CrossFit community. I think that Facebook makes it absurdly easy to fundraise. Like, you have to work hard to not fundraise if you create a fundraiser on Facebook. It's so easy with just a couple of clicks for people to donate to you. So, I think right now what's happening in the space is you have partners out there who are each leveraging different communities, so that when people have chosen that as their community of choice or multiple communities, they have the ability to reach you. So, gone are the days of somebody saying, I'm going to go to this one website, I'm going to look and research and find it online in order to go, or go in person, because I know that's not happening anymore. What's happening now is we're putting your organization, your brand, your mission, your impact in front of people in those different communities. Does that help answer the question?
I think that was good. Excellent. All right, keep going.
Oh, okay. So the strategy for Facebook fundraising is also kind of, there's a spectrum there. There's organic fundraisers, what used to be called birthday fundraisers. It's not just birthdays anymore, where somebody says, instead of getting birthday presents, I want my friends and my network to give to a cause that I really care about. You have all the wonderful psychology pieces that we talk about at Turnkey playing into that, where you're seen doing good for the world, you feel really good about yourself. And like I said, it's very easy to actually, for the transactions themselves to occur. I've done several Facebook fundraisers, and I have different people giving to my fundraisers each time, and it's dependent on the cause. So I've done Facebook fundraisers, for example, for March of Dimes, and I got different donors each time. So I think it also helps address that donor fatigue that we all feel is a really big problem with walks. It helps to set people up to give in a more in a way that lets them choose a little bit more. It's a little low pressure, so the gift can really come from the heart. Any questions on that? That's just my personal experience.
So Kate, would you guess that the algorithm that is automatically deployed, like when you say I did a fundraiser, folks, what she means is that she as an individual set up a fundraiser to support a mission. When Kate says I did a fundraiser for Children's Heart, what you're implying is that the Facebook algorithm is pushing out your fundraiser to different people each time, potentially based on their interest. Do you think that's true?
It would show up on their news feed based on their algorithm and my posts and their posts and all of those things.
Right.
Me choosing March of Dimes happens because of the algorithm strength from the nonprofit. So you see, if you go, I want to do a fundraiser, but I don't know who for yet, then you get recommendations from Facebook based on the algorithm strength from them and your behaviors. So it's kind of working it on both sides. Who sees my ask is different, and that's based on our interactions.
Got it. So, okay, here's what's interesting. All the hell that this country's been through since January 6th was driven by the same sort of algorithm. And here it is, working for good. It can happen. So, yay. All right, keep going, Kate.
Another thing that we talk to people a lot is the data piece. And I know Mike and Lauren can probably talk all day about this and their experience with weighing those pros and cons. But I can say it's very reminiscent to me of like peer-to-peer forum back in 2013 or 14, when everybody was abuzz about DIY campaigns. And at the time we were, can we let go of our white knuckle grip on our brand? Can we give the control and, how people interpret our brand and our mission and let it go so that they can go and fundraise however they see fit. And we all have seen that DIY can, say in a very similar fashion, can be very successful when you do release that white knuckle grip, provide the right amount of support for your fundraisers. And you also have seen, if you build it, it does not necessarily mean that you are going to have DIY fundraisers. There are special circumstances that do lead to that sort of organic DIY. So I think there are a lot of parallels in the conversation, and what we've seen as an industry is DIY was worth it. The level of investment is a personal one to each nonprofit. And I think in the Facebook environment, that's the same thing. Everybody is very paranoid about their data. And I think we got to just accept that and move forward and not let that shut us off from the $100,000 that you could get by releasing that need for data. Do we want the data if we can get it? Yes, absolutely. It helps lead a lot of decisions, but I don't think that should get in the way of us going forward with this route to begin with.
So Kate, I want to take you backward a little bit and just hit it one more time because we got a question about this. So would our organization's Facebook fundraiser reach outside of our community without us paying for boosted post or some other kind of digital campaign? And I answered, that's correct. It would depend on the fundraisers that you recruit to do your fundraising. It would depend on their algorithms as well, right? Or the algorithms applied to them. Is that correct?
It's both. So yes, you can pour a lot of money into Facebook ads. You can, and that would be an acquisition tool for you. But also acknowledging that this is a peer-to-peer effort and knowing that, me saying, hey, Katrina, would you give to me? Like, I am a recruiter for you in that instance, just like I would be for a physical in-person event. So I would say it's both.
Okay, very good. And correct, in Canada and in the US, Facebook does not spontaneously give much of anything. In the US, if they opt in to tell you who they are, you get it. But apparently in Canada, that's not even true. But Kate, do you want to, for just a moment, take a left into the lack of data and some of the interventions from some of our partners to help with that?
I can. I can also speak to a little bit of the Canada topic. The last bit that I've researched it, Canada is not in the same place with Facebook fundraisers because of the tax laws. That we don't have the infrastructure yet for all of the mechanisms that we're talking about on this call today to actually work for Canadian organizations. So that's a good point to make. So Katrina, your question is, what are some organizations doing on the data front?
Yeah, not necessarily the names. And folks, I want to position where Turnkey is in terms of Facebook. aggressively seek out people who study Facebook each and every day and write code to facilitate Facebook fundraising, because it changes so often. So we have a cadre of partners that we use and we refer to. And one of those actually is Mike and Lauren are going to be talking about their experience with them. What Turnkey does is we go into an account, we understand what's there and what your potential is or not, and then we make a recommendation from there. Kate, in broad strokes, could you talk about some of the tools and strategies that are at work that we recommend?
Yes.
Or not?
So yeah, like Katrina mentioned, it's a very personal consideration for each organization, really what you're looking for the Facebook environment to provide to your organization, and the level of investment as well. That does play a big part of it. Hate to say it. So my favorite non-answer, it depends. So what we wanted to highlight for you guys today is just say there are tools out there that will enable you to have people opt in to having communications from you, kind of similar to the email front, the GDRP stuff, where double opt-in is kind of the way of the future for that. Social media, it's not just Facebook, but different social media and apps like that. You can have people opt in different ways. There are workarounds that will enable you to get their information. From there, there have been some challenges on, do we already know who they are and we're just getting their handle? For example, my name on Facebook is Cricket, but everybody professionally knows me as Kate. Will the organization know that? So those kinds of considerations. And I would say the biggest piece for me, like my soapbox in this is, do not let the tool drive the strategy. You guys need to consider the strategy first. We can do all of that together, just like it's any strategic plan. It's just in a very isolated environment and picking the tool or tools that are the most appropriate to drive your strategy.
So as an example, Joanne Beers works with Mike and Lauren, and because she's worked with them at Children's Heart for so long, she knew what they had in-house in terms of internal resources. And one of the things they had in-house, which they're going to talk about, is a very strong volunteer base. And that led her to a particular partner that could take advantage of that very strong volunteer base. She also knew they had some in-house expertise. So we were able to take that into account in terms of which partner to deploy. In other situations, I'll describe an anonymous one for you. They really couldn't or didn't want to deploy volunteers on this effort. They wanted to be staff driven, and they wanted it also not staff driven. They wanted to be professionally driven, and they also had low staff bandwidth, which led us to an entirely different partner. Some of the other considerations, and Kate, interrupt me and say it the right way anytime you want to. Some other considerations are, do I want the majority of activity happening in Facebook groups, the way that Mike and Lauren had it, or do I want to immediately draw those people into Facebook Messenger with a coded tool? So these are the considerations, and it matters who you are, what your internal resources are, and which partner you end up with in order to make it go as fast as it can go. Okay, back to you, Kate. What's next for you?
I think that was pretty much all of the high points that I was going to point out. I will probably play like you as well and interrupt Lauren and Mike with perhaps other organizations in the industry that could add to the conversation. But I would say another soapbox thing for me right now is we have potentially, many people in the industry right now being laid off that were events people or in fear, because events aren't happening as much in person right now. And I would really encourage everybody to consider this an event. Like, this is an event. It's a shorter turnaround time. So it's not a 9-month lead in, it's more 3-4 months of an effort. So I would encourage everybody to consider that expertise to lay it into this strategy in order to steward those relationships as well as possible.
Excellent. Hey, we had a question from earlier that Tessie just did the forehead thump on me about. So how do you recruit people to fundraise for your cause? And Kate, I think you just really answered it, which is you do it the same way you did it for an on the ground event. Yes. Depending on the model that you pick, you would reach out to people in any way that is comfortable for you, given your relationship with that person, be it Facebook, telephone, showing up on their doorstep, and ask them to do it. You know, that's the human part of it. If you run it this way, if you run it more as a pure marketing effort, it's all done digitally and it's usually done professionally. Would you agree, Kate?
Yes, I would. And I would say there's a lot of psychology that you can lay into each of those strategies and approaches.
Very good. And then another one, any insights on how Apple's new update might affect the fundraising algorithms? Which new update are we talking about? I only know of one big thing that happened on Apple in the last couple of days. So anyway, clarify that for me and I'll try and respond, probably not very well. Okay. Has more privacy measures. I don't know what the impact is. And this is one reason that we use our partners, because they are studying it as hard as you can study it, like a bug under a microscope. And it changes so fast that we just simply can't rely on in-house expertise, not at Turnkey. You know, we do the strategic part. We don't push the buttons. And we highly recommend that our clients not invest in building expertise in-house either, because it changes so fast that it's rendered useless very, very quickly. So with that, we are going to move on. All right. Any other questions before we leave Kate? Even though we're not going to leave her, she's going to stay as well. All right. Lauren and Mike, welcome. Thank you for being with us. This is the only slide anybody cares about, right? This is the only one. We had lots of other slides, but we decided we're just going to talk. So Mike, why don't you go first? You're off mute. Tell me, number one, what was the first exposure you had to Facebook fundraising? How did it hit your consciousness?
Well, let me first thank you for the opportunity to be here, for all of your great support and your teams, and all of you who took interest in joining today. Happy to answer that, Katrina. Would you contextualize that in the for this program specifically, or in the foundation's history and farther back?
Put it in the context of the foundation. You know, when I think we first brought this to you, by the way, the particular partner that Mike and Lauren are using is someone that we met who is actually in the UK and had been doing this sort of thing there. And so that it was a fantastic pickup to find them and to align with them. So it's September 1st and your world is upside down. All your events have been virtualized to the best of your ability. And how did this fit for you? When you first heard the idea, what did you think? And what were your considerations?
Sure. Well, I think immediately it was a great fit. And part of that does owe to, we do have an extensive background under Lauren's leadership in Facebook fundraising. So we have been an event-driven organization in many ways. We have been peer-to-peer driven in terms of those successful events. And we have used tools like Facebook. So I would say that an important consideration actually is that your team approached us, so it was a good fit with our organization and the partner that you brought our way. So I do think those things are relevant. I think we'd already been in the midst of a pivot to virtual events as well. We had already shifted our Congenital Heart Walk series into a completely virtualized environment, and we're being successful there. We'd also been hungry for this kind of an event because we have a growing fitness and endurance platform, to a point that Kate made that is relevant for us. Fitness, obviously relevant to our cause in heart health and congenital heart defects. So all of those things really came together. And I think when the particulars of this opportunity, the structure of the program, the kind of support that the Turnkey team and the partner could provide, a natural fit. And that lent well to being able to move quickly. I know Lauren and I have points around the critical role that volunteers played in our success, the happy marriage with marketing and development. I'll let you take us there as you will, but it was really a strong fit and something we were kind of, the stars lined up for something that was perfect timing, perfect fit for us, right, and something steeped in our own background as well.
One of the stats we don't have on here, you know, we said we raised $80,000 or $87,000 in 3 months. What did you spend? What was the gross expenditure?
Sure. Well, and I'd say we netted 87,500. So we had a spend on the order of 112,500. We had a spend, and I believe it harkens back to a question that somebody asked. We did use a media campaign that the partner advised on, from strategy to content, where we had some project management fees, which were really important for a smaller team to help get a project going and steward some of our group formation, et cetera. And then finally, we had incentives for registrants who signed up. You see the reference on the screen to the t-shirt. So we had a production partner and a graphic designer design that shirt, fulfill those shirts that talk all about how they're stepping up to do the challenge. So that comprised our cost of approximately $25,000 and a gross income of $112,000 plus.
Okay, thank you. I think you just clarified. You get grossed 112, you spent 25, you netted 87, right?
Correct.
Okay. Could you, and Lauren, I'm going to go to you for this. I'm assuming that your team had the majority of the digital lift on this thing, and Mike's team had the volunteer engagement lift. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And welcome, by the way. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's well, it's always wonderful to tell a great story. So from your perspective as a marketing person, how extensive was your involvement in peer-to-peer fundraising before you did this?
So I think being a smaller organization and a smaller team, we all definitely have our hands in fundraising and in peer-to-peer and our walk series and all of that. You know, a lot of times it's all hands on deck for different things. So I think I had a fair amount of experience in helping with our walk series and that peer-to-peer. But I think, you know, to Mike's point about Facebook fundraising, we, up until this point, it had been very organic. We just had always had a lot of great success with people setting up birthday fundraisers, setting up, you know, just fundraisers in honor or memory of a heart warrior, heart angel in their life. We just always had a lot of organic success with that. So I think when this idea and opportunity was brought to us, it just made a lot of sense to put a little bit more plan and strategy behind the Facebook fundraiser to see, you know, where it could go from there.
Love it. Just for fun, because we never know who's going to own this effort. In the chat, put your title or your rough title, you know, what area you work in. Are you in development? Are you in marketing? Just for fun, so that we can all see. And if you put it in, they can't see the chat, I think. So maybe in Q&A, just put in your title in Q&A, because I can read them. Annual giving is someone, development, marketing, social media, fund development, VP operations, development. All right, so, and then event specialist, campaign coordinator, campaign development, development director, event, yeah, fundraising consultant, digital marketing specialist, donor relations manager. As you can see, that's normal. We never know who's going to own it. So, you know, this kind of alignment that we're seeing between Mike and Lauren is just vital. Lauren, did your team, and Mike, maybe you already had these kinds of materials. One of the things that these guys did that was interesting, because like you heard this idea and you just immediately went there, and that is that you reframed Facebook into being a peer-to-peer fundraising platform, and you did all the things that you would have done otherwise. So Mike, can you talk about that? Like, when did it hit you? Like, oh, I do this every day, all day. Talk about that.
Sure. Well, and again, we had already pivoted our congenital heart walks to the virtual platform. So we'd seen the power, and, you know, we owe a great thanks to Facebook for many, many years. It's been almost a constituent management tool for us, in that where this is where we've built community, and we do it on a nationwide basis. We do it in our regions that are led by excellent volunteers, and we do it on event specific pages for our walk. So it's always been kind of in our DNA to be there. And then in 2020, which did throw a few curveballs, we had already been leveraging it to put the word out of what we were doing and to augment announcements and e-blasts, but heavily to use Facebook and other tools to get everybody up to speed on how we were pivoting, what our particular virtualized environment was like. And I would say that we really took a ambitious vision of what a virtual event can be in terms of engagement, involvement, how we can do things that actually weren't as easy to do in a in-person event that flies by really quickly. So we had already done that. And again, great gratitude and debt to our volunteers who led the way, do it with enthusiasm as they always did. We also have some key fundraisers and donors who had already been using Facebook and other peer-to-peer fundraising tools for an office fundraising challenge in a running environment. So it all came together for us. We were familiar with forming groups, with cultivating them. I think for Lauren's team, it was easy to say, how do we get volunteers synergistically working in their areas, but with the staff to spread the word. So in addition to the media strategy, volunteers were out there, and it was very comfortable for us. We had some relevant background. I think the other thing is that as a foundation, we have a single focus mission for funding research to advance the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of congenital heart defects. But also we find ways all day, all week, all year to be fundraising. And so we're used to collaborating to a point that Lauren raised. And Facebook's been central to that, and more than up to our needs in that regard.
I love it. I love it. Lauren, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions in from Dave. What did you spend the $25,000 on specifically?
Yeah, so we, that spend, I think Mike had mentioned that part of the fundraiser was, as you see on the screen, the t-shirt registrants. So what happened was we spent money on Facebook ads that went out, and that spend was actually relatively low. We spent just under $3,000 on our Facebook ads. And so once someone saw an ad, they were directed to join the Facebook group if they were interested in doing the challenge. Once they joined the group, they saw a post that was pinned to the top where it explained to them, what the challenge was, told them to, click here to register for your t-shirt, and then start your Facebook fundraiser as part of the challenge. And so the t-shirts were part of the cost as well. And those were mailed out to everyone who registered for one, which actually turned into, I think, a great motivational piece for everyone that was part of the group. Because once people started receiving their t-shirts in the mail, they would post photos, just sharing how excited they were to wear their t-shirt and go out and start running. So I think that was definitely money well spent, and definitely got the, excited juices flowing and getting people ready to do the challenge. So
Love it.
those were the main costs.
Love it. Can you talk a little bit more about why is the number of total registrants different from the number of t-shirt registrants?
Yeah, so the total registrants, as you can see, it says it's from the Facebook ads specifically. So that is how many people registered or chose to join the group from seeing the ads alone. The t-shirt number is higher because we also did a lot of internal promoting to our volunteers, to let them know we were doing this challenge, and inviting them to join the group if they wanted to participate. And a lot of them reached out to family and friends and shared the news with them, and we had a lot of great success just organically having friends and family of volunteers or people that were part of the organization want to join and participate. So that is why that number is higher.
Very nice. Dave, I'm going to save your question for a minute because that's a segue to what are these guys going to do next? So let's see, and a link to your Facebook page by chance. You have now, and Mike, if you could discuss this about the timing of the event, how long you left that group open and when you shut it down. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, the media campaign that we talked about, that opened. So the official dates of the challenge, when you had the chance to run your mileage or walk it or an alternative activity, was October 1 to 31. But we opened in September. So to Lauren's remarks, people immediately began registering. We had waves of the t-shirt fulfillment. And I'm not a behavioral psychologist or economist, but I think we learned that the excitement about getting that t-shirt and proudly wearing it and sharing a photo, as Lauren said, coupled with peer-to-peer psychology, people got rolling. So we've got our earliest adopters and the people that don't need much encouragement at all to get going, up through some late registrations. We don't keep registration open too deeply into October because some of what we're focused on is that group management, the group engagement, and kind of a time period specific. Yep. So October 1 to 31, and truly amazing. I think one of the benefits above and beyond the dollars, which are powering our mission, was just the active participation, people that are connected to the cause, but hadn't previously been involved, even if they'd been aware of things. This presented a new opportunity, and they built their own community here, and they're as interested in our next challenge, which is planned and afoot and will be announce very shortly, more of a wintry activity that you'll hear soon too. So we do intend to repeat this. We actually have some lessons learned in the form of some improvements and enhancements we're making. So really kind of mid-September from germination launch, I'd say actually prior to that, to get our ducks in a row with your team and the partner through October 1 to 31, and then some post-October 31 fundraising that we continue to see happening, checks coming in, et cetera, and certainly interest in our next challenge.
And we're going to hit that in just a moment. Lauren, had a question. Did you have any referral benefits if an existing donor gets a new donor? And I'm going to change that word out. You know, one of the things about peer-to-peer fundraising is, you know, we're all about the fundraiser, you know, as opposed to the donor. So I'm going to assume that's what's meant here. In terms of the t-shirt, we didn't reward or recognize anyone for recruiting. We simply recognized people for registering and fundraising. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. But I will take that back a little bit. You know, the nature of Facebook is it's built on recognition. You know, it is all about being seen and you know, demonstrating your behavior, and that leads other people to it and reinforces your own. So that's that. Okay, so Kate, I want to go to you for a moment, and I want you to frame the first experience these guys had, and then talk about the potential for expansion, and then you can also lead Mike and Lauren into the next event.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by frame their first experience.
You can just talk. How's that? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So in terms of, you know, I think they took step one. Now they're moving to step two. In generalities, talk about what is step one and then what is step two.
Yeah. So there's definitely some beauty in the Facebook approach, where, you know, it's kind of like that fulcrum. You can get a heavier acquisition lift than you would in a lot of other channels. So I would say that the first experience that they had was really to develop an understanding of how people are going to react to this brand online. Are people going to pick it up, respond to those ads, and start to fundraise? We have seen in some cases where, you know, after a pilot, we see maybe this isn't the best approach for that organization in that time. So there would be some times when, you know, in a conversation with an organization, we would say, you know, maybe this isn't the best thing for you. And I think that's really important to consider, is how to scale appropriately for your organization. See that first pilot and then scale in a way that you have the means to do. And I think going forward, what Mike and Lauren have an incredible opportunity to do is they could repeat this same exact event and see all new different people. They could do a different physical activity and see all new different people. So really the sky's the limit here, because of that shorter turnaround time for this sort of a challenge to go through planning, execution, fundraising, and then reporting. You could do one a quarter. You could do, you know, 2 a year and get, you know, 85. They have, what was the percent for you guys of new people to your organization? Was it the 80%? Yeah.
More than 80%.
Yeah. I would say, because that's just t-shirt folks. So if you looked at the overall registrants, yeah, I'm seeing, you know, we're getting in the 95% for some folks. And that's really incredible, especially for a nonprofit who maybe has the rhetoric of, well, our mission just isn't as fill in the blank, you know, as others. We do see that a lot as a limiting belief. And I think that the Facebook route can help really challenge those limiting beliefs.
Well said. So step two for Mike and Lauren. Mike, you want to hit that and talk about what you're going to layer into this on your next outing?
Sure. And, you know, maybe I could just echo back to something Kate said. And I think, well, actually a couple things. I think earlier on you said, you know, tools follow strategy. So the strategy has to matter. It has to be a good fit. To your point about, is it the right fit for an organization? We went fitness. Fitness is attractive for our particular cause and constituents. But to your point earlier, Katrina, it's an event. An event could be formed around other challenges or other, you know, gatherings and communities. It does work particularly well for us. We also have taken advantage of the devastation to the fitness event industry and gym closures, right? So that I would say that there's some opportunity there. And we're staying in that space. It is a natural alignment with our mission for CHD research funding and our heavy emphasis on heart health. So we're in marathon charity partners. Of course, we've got our walks, and that's a big deal for some of our constituents. We have individual fundraisers in the fitness space. So we're staying here. We're looking at something more in the, did you want me to share where we might go in terms of the next challenge, or to Kate's point, how we might layer through a calendar?
And also tell us specifically what your challenge was this past time.
Okay, it was running, Lauren, do you want to talk about the running, the volume?
Sure, yeah. So our challenge was to run 50 miles in the month of October. And so to Mike's point, the timing worked out really well because of, people not being able to go work out in their normal route. Also the time of year, the weather was, pretty favorable for running, no matter where you lived in the country in the October timeframe. So it just worked out really well to do a running challenge during that time, which is why our next challenge is going to be slightly different, since the weather will likely not be as favorable for outdoor activity.
No.
So I want to, before we move on, Lauren, one of the smartest things I think you did was that you included an activity tracker in your challenge and your collateral. And when I read that, I'm like, wow, how did they afford that? That's incredible. That must have been really expensive. Tell them how you did it.
Yeah, so we included, when you received your t-shirt, you also received a printed out tracker. So it was just a branded cute tracker that said, I'm running 50 miles in October, and it had, every mile listed out so that people could exit out as they ran their miles. They could hang it on their fridge. A lot of people were posting photos saying, I ran 10 miles today. Here's my tracker. So it was really exciting to see people as they progressed. And then especially at the end, we got so many photos of completed trackers, and just people were so proud to finally cross out that 50-mile mark that they made it to. So yeah, that was definitely a big hit.
And so smart. It doesn't have to be complex, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Mike, go to what you're doing next, both in terms of the activity and in terms of the technology you're going to use, and why.
Right. So we'll be launching a squats challenge. Those are immensely popular. Our partner has seen tremendous success with those. We'll be launching and announcing that very soon. It lends well to working indoors. Don't need equipment, don't need to head outside. Works across geographies. Again, as a nationwide organization, we're dealing with different climates, and want something. We'll give some guidance to help people not only with their tracking, but how do you build up, undertake some things. But I think what I'd like to share too, in terms of progress and what we've learned, where we're going, we are going to add some further enhancements through a partner of a partner that's going to enable better recognition and understanding of the data that we're getting. So as we think about the data that Facebook generously supplies, but how we can use tools and enhancements to corral that, get a better look at who our fundraisers are, facilitate easier communication with them on their boards, on their walls. That allows us to take different email journeys for fundraisers. So we've got people that are going right away, setting up that fundraiser, others who may not move as quickly on setting it up, or who may have different challenges, may benefit from different kinds of encouragement and enthusiasm. So we'll be able to stratify and get in lanes on that communication. That data management will serve us not only on our fitness challenges, but other Facebook fundraisers, and ultimately support our donor stewardship and coordination efforts as well. The partner that we work with is doing a great job to create alternative messages. So an equivalent of A/B messaging. We can try different things that work for our particular audience and fundraisers or our cause. So we have some options to see what is working. So to see the data, to more immediately be able to thank those who are fundraising and to thank their donors and supporters and be visible, to boost those along who might benefit or appreciate some encouragement, to customize the messaging there and do that in a more real-time way is going to be transformative for us on the fundraiser, because some of the psychology here is this is time limited, it's quick, as we said. So we would like to get everybody going and underway. And then once they have taken all that initiative, how do we engage them right away? How do we give them tools to spread the word? How do we turn them into ambassadors for our mission as well? So those are things that post-pilot, what we achieved in October, we're excited to do, and then really build a calendar of events that appeal to different people at different stages and locations.
I am pretty sure that I could, like, if I found all the right challenges, I could be buff in a year. Like I could be little Miss Hard Body old lady. Hey, talk to
Lauren,
us
please
about,
register Katrina right now. I think we've got our first March registrant.
I know.
hey, can you talk about what the future is in terms of other platforms?
Yeah, it looks like more and more platforms are integrating with Facebook. And what that allows you to do is utilizing your existing platform when you have your walk event or any sort of thing like that. What somebody raises on Facebook can be attributed to their fundraiser for an event. That's happening. That's already been happening for a few years. Many organizations have those basic integrations. And what we're seeing now is this is more of utilizing Facebook to almost in a way replace your platform. There are some advantages and disadvantages in that. So the advantages are they've already done the investing into the algorithm. So you don't have to build something from scratch, like a crazy piece of AI. You don't have to, they're not going to take, Facebook doesn't take anything off the top of the donation like a platform fee would. But you sacrifice the data and the transparency of what's actually happening, who's supporting you, and that sort of thing. That is changing every day. So, stay tuned. It could be a non-issue in a year. Yeah. So I think that's in general what's happening with platforms and how Facebook is coming into play for that. And you're also seeing more integrations. There's so many partners in this space that are extremely open to sharing their information with whatever the nonprofit needs to use for their reporting their deliverables. So whether it's your CRM or a platform or a tracking app that you've invested in to help have the person's physical activity be loading through. So really, there are a lot of different investments that you could make. Is that kind of the direction you were thinking?
It is, but also I want to know, but I want to go in that direction for a moment to answer a couple of questions. Kelly asked, do you need a donor platform to work with Facebook on your fundraising? The answer is no. So think about this. We've got, let's use TeamRaiser. TeamRaiser has a Facebook integration. That's what Kate was just talking about. So your audience starts with your TeamRaiser audience who is already there, and then they flow through to Facebook. So that's cool. They get, some algorithmic support and they fundraise more, and it goes back to the thermometer. That's all good. But that audience that you have on TeamRaiser is the smallest. It's a grain of sand on Miami Beach as compared to what's in Facebook. So what we're talking about today is what's in Facebook in terms of potential audiences, organic fundraisers. We used to call them birthday fundraisers. That's what we're talking about. And the fundraising happens on Facebook. That is the analogy to TeamRaiser and Donor Drive and all those other platforms. And it behaves very differently. It's free. It needs little information. It has free acquisition tools. That's the way I think about it. Next question I wanted to get to, and again from Dave. Dave, the donor and fundraiser information currently on Facebook is opt-in unless you deploy the kinds of tools that Mike and Lauren are going to deploy in their next activity. Those tools are still opt-in, but they create a situation that the opt-in is highly likely. You'll also notice that, if you offer a t-shirt for registration, you have got all the data. That's all the data. And again, there are other partners who do it very differently. They don't get all the data. They don't offer a t-shirt. They pull people into Messenger and they manage them there into a position to get their data. So these are super, super different methods. And that's why we encourage you, let us evaluate your situation before we recommend somebody, because they approach things very differently. I think we did all open questions. We've answered 8. Good for us. It's 2:52.
I would like to add something.
Yeah.
There was a question from Alice about what was the hook for getting people to fundraise.
Mhm.
And I don't think we would, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the pressure of the group mentality. The beauty of having a Facebook group is that the event experience, the joy, the community, all of the connections that you feel like you would have had on event day, we're putting it in Facebook now. So the Facebook group can really be wild. It can be a wild experience, different for each nonprofit, each challenge. You know, it's very organically fed. And so it's incredibly easy to start your Facebook fundraiser and get donations. So we know as soon as we can get somebody to do that, we're going to see success. Your average fundraising will be very good. So the way we get people to do that is through the Facebook ads and the group coaching.
Yep. Kelly asked one more question. She said, do you also use Google for your fundraising, Instagram or Twitter? And Kate, do you want to address that question?
Sure. Mike, did you want to add something to that point really quick?
I just want to say wonderful question before that. It would be hard to overstate the contribution of some of our volunteers who in that magical community dynamic, as soon as somebody registered and said, I've joined, I'm ready to go, I'm nervous, I'm whatever it may be, we had volunteers who were responsive, cheering them on, welcoming them. So that's, I think, what any organization would do well to mimic the fortune that we have. Volunteers play a key role in that community building and getting things out of the gate. And then you've got a lot of momentum. And again, that's inherent to the Facebook platform, as you point out, Katrina, but we were super fortunate that way. And we recommend others engage volunteers.
Well, you were more than super fortunate. You were super smart because you immediately, it just snapped into place for you guys mentally that this is peer-to-peer. This is what we do for peer-to-peer. We deploy our volunteers to create energy, excitement, love, and it worked. It worked beautifully. Lauren, do you have any other thoughts?
I was just going to add to that and say that, you know, since a lot of these people were coming in through just seeing Facebook ads, you know, maybe they saw that, you know, oh, I want to run 50 miles, but didn't really necessarily know who the Children's Heart Foundation was or what we did. You know, once they did join that group and say that they were participating, we had volunteers who were saying, you know, thank you so much. Here's my personal story of why this organization is so important. You know, when you set up your fundraiser and do this, you're going to be helping kids like my daughter or my son, or, you know, so we had a lot of success in them openly sharing their stories and just explaining, you know, why the mission was so important, which I think definitely, you know, helped motivate people to get those fundraisers created and to, you know, really feel like they were accomplishing something big.
Love it. Kate, answer about Twitter, Google, Instagram, and then I've got 3 more questions. Go.
Okay. So do you also use Google for your fundraising, Instagram or Twitter? Yes. So those are separate decisions that you can absolutely do going through like SEO and those sorts of conversations. And I do know that some of the tools that we've referenced today on the call have the similar structures that they've built in Facebook dashboarding so that you can see what's happening on the Instagram. Twitter, not as much. I have not heard world-shattering things on the Twitter front because it behaves very differently. For the mechanics question from Shannon, like does Facebook provide a report for donors or thank you letters? That's the same kind of answer. So depending on which tool or tools you guys want to look at, they do that piece, the reporting, in a different way. Facebook has not built it in such a way that those things are inherent to Facebook. You have to use one of these tools if you want to get that data and get that opt-in. So I hate to say that. It depends, answer again.
And then the Jennifer, similar question to Kelly. I was wondering if registration was done via Facebook. That is done via, Lauren, if you could confirm, a Facebook form. Yeah, so the way that we did it, we're going to be doing it a little bit different this next time, but so the initial form was through Facebook, and that was what you saw when you clicked on one of the ads. But then once you were in the group, we had a Google form set up for filling out to sign up for your t-shirt. And so that is how we got, you know, everyone's names, shipping addresses, emails, you know, all the constituent data from that t-shirt registration form. Excellent. Very
And
good.
I'll also touch on the question. I don't see who it's from, but was there an actual Facebook fundraiser? Yes. So the journey is Facebook ads get you to join the group. We ask you to register for a t-shirt and start a Facebook fundraiser.
And that is this method, but other partners with nonprofits with other internal resources have a different method. It depends who you are and what you've got or don't have, is where we would land.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say it's not directing somebody to the website to register. So
thank you.
Not
Thank
that.
you. Yes, absolutely. I think that's it. Mike and Lauren, thank you so much. This was delightful
Thank you.
to have you.
Thank you, everyone.
And hey, people, great job asking questions. It's so much more fun when you do. Thank you so much. All right. Have a great afternoon. We'll all talk soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.